everybody. Welcome to Ask an Expert. We are joined by the original experts and probably our most frequent experts for a reason. Kyle and Jen Carter are here with us. Of course, they're both Ride IQ coaches. They're partners in Ride IQ. They're 5-star event riders and just amazing humans and really great at sharing their wealth of knowledge. So today's topic is ask them anything. So this is kind of an open forum for anything that's been on your mind or curiosity that you have, or if you've had like some training challenges coming up that you're troubleshooting, the Carters are here to help. And maybe we should start this hour by taking a collective deep breath. Even if you're listening after the fact, let's all take a deep breath in and hold and out through the mouth. Okay, I think Kyle might not be participating, but Jen and Kinsey did, which I appreciate. And the reason we're doing that is, okay, I think Kyle maybe did. I know at least this quad of people here have had fast-paced days in really good ways, though. Like Kyle was just telling us that he started his day at 4:30 a.m., took a flight. He's at the American Eventing Championships in Lexington, and no second has been unaccounted for in terms of tasks and teaching and now being here. And Jen is running the farm back in Ocala. Kinsey and I have had a marathon day, but all exciting things. So take a deep breath if you need to. We did a Facebook post in the group yesterday and asked people to set intentions for the week. And I thought it was really great how many people said that they were going to be present and enjoy their horse. Or even they said, like, I think Anna Payne said, I'm just going to take a deep breath and like get connected with my animals, which is the best intention. So with that, Kyle and Jen, different locations. I guess we'll start with Kyle. Kyle, tell us how you're doing and what this week is going to bring for you. Can't hear you yet.
We can't hear you, Kyle.
I don't know why, because you're not on mute. All right, maybe we could start with Jen. Should we, kids?
Hopefully you can hear me. Yeah, good. Okay, so you want to know what my week holds? So basically, obviously, for anybody following the news, there's a hurricane approaching us. So, of course, somehow Kyle manages to leave every time we have a hurricane coming. This happened last year when Ian was coming, and yet again, there's Kyle getting on the plane to leave. So we spent the day, I did ride a little bit, but we did spend the day getting things just kind of set up for that. And tomorrow we'll just have to see what happens. So that's going to be my week, is just playing it by ear. And if we have a lot of cleanup, and hopefully we don't lose power for too long, and then hopefully Thursday, Friday, get back on track. My kids are out of school, so good or bad. So, but hopefully by the end of the week, we're back on track with that. And then my kids have a cross country race on Saturday morning, and I have to help volunteer there. So and I'm looking forward to watching Burley as well. So that's kind of my week.
And that is cross country running. If anyone is curious, the Carters are incredible athletes and specifically very, very fast runners. So that's exciting. You guys have a race coming up. Jen, as someone who was, born in Minnesota, and we rode with you guys in Florida, but I never got to experience a hurricane. I've seen all the chatter happening in the Facebook group and beyond about preparing for a hurricane, but I could not tell you one thing that entails other than Kyle posted about having enough red wine on hand because that doesn't require refrigeration. So, which truly I do consider a tip, but what does preparing for a hurricane entail, and how do you, like, once the storm is there anything that you like can do for the horses or for your guys' selves? I don't think that there's a lot of basements there. So just tell us more about hurricane preparation and enduring it once it's there.
Well, everybody has a different way, I suppose. What we typically do, and I will say maybe this year we haven't been as prepared as other years, but we just make sure, and you'll hear this if you live in Florida, you just hunker down. That's like the most overused term in ever, So we just made sure the horses are all in tonight because the worst of the storm for us is kind of supposed to hit around like 4 a.m. to about 10 a.m. So right now the horses are just all staying in. They all have a lot of water, hay, clean stalls. And then so the morning, I expect we'll lose power overnight. But we have a lot of water stored up. We filled up a bunch of containers, barrels, but yesterday Kyle got the generator working. So we actually can plug the generator into our house and run the well for the horses so everybody can get water. So I don't want to have to do that out in the storm. So I'll wait till probably tomorrow afternoon and just plug the generator in and get the well going so we can just, and then hopefully if we don't have a lot of trees down, we can just, everybody can go back out tomorrow night like normal. Once the worst of it passes. So for us, that's kind of, we just put things away, like big objects that could become projectiles. We used to put all the jumps away, or at least down in the low-lying area, and we've kind of gotten lazy and quit doing that. Now we're just like, well, they'll just blow over on their own. It's fine.
You'll pick them up.
Yeah, exactly. So we didn't do that. But yeah, that's, honestly, that's kind of, now it's just a waiting game. You just sit there and go, okay, I showered, I got water, I'm going to eat, like, before the power goes out. So it's just kind of, that's about all we do here. So made sure yesterday we got gas and diesel for everything that needs it, and got groceries. They recommend you go a week, but we never do, because Ocala honestly doesn't get to where nothing's going on. So you can always, probably not tomorrow, but Thursday we'd be able to drive in and get food or whatever. So we do.
Got it. Okay, so it's really about being proactive, making sure you have everything you need while you might not have power or electricity. Last question is, because it's going to be such a big storm, your horses that might be more reactive to that, do you guys ever give them like calming supplements or even sedate them before a storm like this? Is that something that anybody does? I'm getting a head shake. No, just, yeah.
Some people might, I don't know. We don't, because honestly, the storms are bad, but I would say our summer thunderstorms can be just as bad. And so our horses, I don't know. I don't even know what you would give them. We don't really have any that freak out. They just kind of hang out in their stalls like it's a normal thunderstorm. So as far as I know, I'm not in there watching them, but we never see any indication of anything other than that. So.
Got it. Yeah. Okay, so they're just hunkering down too. Kyle is back. His microphone is working. So Kyle, I'll hand it over to you to respond to that, and then also tell us about your week.
Yeah, I would guess that probably you could, give them some sort of trank to help settle them. But honestly, I think that, like Jen was saying, like in all the years we've gone through them, the horses have always handled it pretty well. Of course, the dogs get calming supplements and thunder shirts and all this nonsense, but our horses have to tough it out. But the horses are way more sensible than the dogs. The dogs are stupid. And so like Jen was saying, is yesterday, I taught a clinic last weekend in Colorado, just outside of Denver at Becca Caulfield's. One of our Ride IQ members set it up. It was for the adult area. So what area is that? I don't actually know. But so she set that up, and I went out on the Friday morning. I flew out there, taught dressage sort of late morning to afternoon, then show jumped on Saturday, and then cross country on Sunday. And it was great, actually. Really enjoyed it. The people were great. The horses were pretty awesome. It was a really successful weekend, and then flew back Sunday night. Drove into the farm at like 2:30 in the morning. So I didn't help prep very much for the hurricane as well yesterday. I was pretty useless, actually.
Yeah, you got out of both sides of this.
Yeah, exactly. So I did have to rebuild the carburetor a little bit on the generator. I went to start it. It's been a very reliable generator for like 23 years, and it wouldn't start. And so I took it kind of partially apart and cleaned the jets out, and then had to punch a hole through the filter, because by the time I realized there was a clog there, I couldn't get another filter. And got it started. Felt very proud of myself, but I'm telling you, both, like, I mean, I was covered in gas. Every time I did anything, it was like gas spraying all over me. It was awful. But I think that then I got a text today while I'm sitting there. So I flew in here, left the farm at 4:30, flew in, had a person in the ring first thing in the morning. Then I've taught dressage lessons most of the day. Walked one course. I had another Ride IQ member do dressage today in the intermediate, and another one that was in the modified this morning. And it was I got a text from Tick Maynard, who lives down the road from us, Tick and Sinead, and he wanted to know, because a couple of years ago I had to show him how you can hot wire your well. If you have a generator, you can actually get some wires and hook it to the generator so that you don't run out of water. So a couple of years ago, before the hurricane, I showed him how to do that. He texted me at like 1 o'clock. He's like, "Hey, do you think you could come over and show me how to hook the generator back up to the well?" I was like, "If something goes wrong, I'll FaceTime you, but I'm not there." He's like, "Okay, so what do I need?" I'm like, I mean, do you retain none of the stuff we talked about? So I feel like we should do a whole series on, because this happens all the time. Like Buck Davidson's always having me go over there and fix stuff at his place, and I am not the most handy person, but I'm like, I think we should have like a whole series on Ride IQ on how to actually do things. Like I saw someone was looking for a trailer repair person up here because they had a flat tire on their trailer at the site. I'm like, and I almost was like, you know what, I'm going to come over there and show you how to change it. And I was like, you know what, you're a little too busy to add that to your day. But if you're around a farm long enough, you develop all sorts of skills that you probably never thought you were going to need or want. So so the horse park looks great. Everything's green and beautiful up here. No hurricane coming to me. The weather is lovely, and the courses, I walked one course today, the modified. Jay Hambley, who has done a Ask an Expert for us, I think a couple of years ago, is designing the course here, and it did a beautiful job. I mean, whoever built the course did a lovely job, but the design is really nice as well. So super excited to sort of see that start. And we have tomorrow 3 horses, I think, doing cross country, and we're here all week. I think my last person goes at 5:30 Sunday afternoon. I end up leaving Sunday night, and that's another kid who rides with us named John Henry, who is also on Ride IQ because he's super keen and wants to learn. And so when I told him and his mom about like how it would help them get better, and they, the suggestion was all it took, and they jumped on. And then I'm doing I'm involved in a reality TV show, and we've done one recording with me, and it's not my thing, but they have me come in as a guest coach, and then we're doing another whatever, not series, but episode here starting tomorrow. So it's a bit of a weird week for me because it's going to be a lot of stuff that is a little bit out of my wheelhouse, but fortunately it just requires a lot of talking, and apparently I've got that down pat.
You do have that down. I just got kicked out of the studio for a minute. I came back in, and this platform has a touch up my appearance option on the camera, and it had gone off when I came back in, and it was alarming. So I have it back on, thankfully, though. You have a lot of balls in the air right now, Kyle. Tell us, I want to get into both the clinic and the AECs, but you just mentioned the reality show, which is something that's totally different than what most people have experienced before. And I know we have had a couple of members say that they've seen you, I think it shows, with cameras following you around. So tell us, like, what is the premise of this reality show? How'd you get involved? Will it air, or is that still TBD?
No, so it's a family from Tennessee that live in Florida now, and so it's called Riding with the Rhythms, and it follows these 2 girls who ride with Maddie Scott, who's a student of mine, and also a Ride IQ member. Pretty much make them do it. And it's basically it's trying to follow their journey from becoming, from doing the lower level to becoming a professional and maybe even ending up on a team at some point. The kids are only like 13 and 15, and they have a great crew working on it, a super editor and stuff, and they've actually already sold it to Horse and Country magazine, Horse and Country TV, and that's coming out this fall. So I don't know when the series starts, but they've got 2 episodes all set up and everything. And then, it's, like I have spent a lot of time in front of cameras doing interviews for different companies. And then I've done a little bit of work when I've been at events where there's been back when I had some sort of name recognition, like a news channel wanted to talk about like an event or whatever. So, and that was kind of intimidating because you're like on the morning TV show basically. And that, when I was younger, that was kind of a little bit shocking and intimidating. But this is quite natural for me because I just basically, I'm basically, a help coach. I give them a little bit of guidance and color commentary, I think is probably
color
what I'm
commentary
known for.
Totally. What is he going to say next factor? Kyle, something is happening with your audio right now. So I try muting it and maybe coming back. We can hear you, but there's a lot of like crackling. So you might, and he's totally gone. Oh, nope, he's back. You guys, it feels like the hurricane has already arrived. Maybe that's what we should, Kinsey, do some editing. So at the beginning, I'll say the hurricane is here. Kyle and Jen Carter are fighting through the storm. Kyle, give us a test audio and we'll see if it's working. Otherwise, we'll throw it over to Jen. The beauty of having 2 guests.
Okay. Is it better now or not?
Nope, it's not better. So,
Kyle, is your phone low battery by any chance? Oh, well, now we can't hear you at all.
Yeah, now your mic's totally gone. So I would leave and come back and we'll chat with Jen. Poor Kyle, he's had a day. Okay, well, the thing that I was going to get into on a clinic, but it really pertains to any, what I'm curious about is the foundational skills that you guys, or exercises that you guys go through with new riders or use to check in with your existing students. Because, from going to clinics, that pretty much every group starts with the same exercise or grid or whatever to kind of like lay the groundwork for we have the necessary tools to move forward from here. Are there either any skills that come to mind for you? I'll speak, I don't know if you and Kyle, you probably don't share these exactly. So are there any skills that you're like, these are the things that are kind of like non-negotiables for my students that we will work through before moving forward, or exercises that you feel like are a great way to set a foundation, or as a coach, kind of like get to know what you're working with? Does anything come to mind in those realms?
You threw me the hard question. This is a Kyle question for sure. He can fill the hour with this one. When I start with anyone, I think they have to be able to hold a rhythm in the canter when they're jumping. And so any exercise that can help with that. I like to do a lot of flat work with the people before they jump. Usually just kind of, my favorite one is spiral in and leg yield out on a circle. I probably use that with everybody at some point, just to kind of get the horse looser behind and get them supple. And then, I don't have any specific exercise. We have so many on Ride IQ, but just getting them to be able to hold a rhythm while they're jumping to me is the key. If they can't do that, it's going to be a disaster, right? So, sorry, I'm not very helpful with that. I don't really do that many clinics, so it's kind of a hard answer for me anyways. So Kyle looks confused.
There. Should we try that?
Yeah, you're good, Kyle. Jen, that was a really helpful answer. And one thing that I've learned from the Ride IQ lessons with all of our coaches, so 5-star event rider, Grand Prix dressage rider, Grand Prix show jumper, is the frequency that they use that spiral in and spiral out circle. And that was not something that I really had in my repertoire of my schooling days. But clearly that's an effective exercise. As far as establishing the rhythm in the canter before jumping, like, what are you doing? Are are you doing anything specific to ensure that rhythm exists? Like, are you doing a lot of forward canter to collected canter to working canter, or what helps establish that rhythm if it's not there right off the bat?
I like doing the small circle, big circle canter. So, make them start on a big circle, do one small circle, go back out. Because usually what I see anyways is that when they go to that small circle, the horse wants to rush a bit and then they try and hold them up. So I think for me, I find it's a good way to teach them to let the horse hold themselves without, because usually they feel the pressure on their mouth and they want to go forward with that. So I like that. I use that a lot.
That's really helpful. In the chat, we have a lot of commentary on the reality show situation, and I think most of it is thanks to Holly, but she has some suggestions for the title. Keeping Up with the Carters, Say Yes to the Dressage Test. There's a show, Say Yes to the Dress, The Great British Jump Off. Keep them coming in the chat if you guys have more My Super Sweet 16 Faults. Oh, this is good. There's so many spin-off opportunities for you guys if you decide that reality TV is the world that you just want to live in. All right, Kyle, I cut you off and you were talking about color commentary on this reality show. Is there anything else that you want to discuss regarding your, aspiring Hollywood career?
Yeah. Well, so I got a message this morning as well that I've been asked again to do the handicapping for the 5-star at Maryland, which is always for the Chronicle of the Horse, which is always fun because then I get to really look in depth at people's records and stuff like that. And I find it very interesting to see what's happening there. And then my Hollywood career, I see big things for me. I mean, because I don't need to act. I can just be myself, and that's gonna be all the entertainment's right there.
We learned at Kentucky this year. We started going live to Instagram and Facebook interviewing Kyle, and it took about 30 seconds before my brain was going like, oh my God, was this a good idea or a bad idea? What is he going to say next? Fortunately, everything was it was admissible for those channels, but he did have me on the edge of my seat. So
but
it makes
interesting on that. It's funny because when I do the interviewing of other riders and stuff like that, it is remarkable how many of them are able to do that sort of like right off the top of their head, and also like the majority of them at that level. It's not very often you get one that drops the ball. They're very it's kind of fun because I'm with you. Sometimes you're like, oh no, but I know that we had Tammy Smith at Kentucky, and I know Tammy pretty well, obviously, but it was just fun because I was like, I wonder what she's gonna say now, and it was awesome.
You poked and prodded Tammy, and she was ready. She fed it right back to you. Thank goodness. Yeah, that was a great interview. So the question that I asked Jen when you were away, I would love to hear your answer too. And it's regarding the clinic that you just did in Colorado. And I know you clinic a lot, but you both also take in new students a lot and just ensure a specific foundation for your students. So the question is twofold, like most of my questions. Are there foundational skills that you kind of consider most important or do not pass go? Jen said rhythm in the canter is one that's really important for her. And then the second one is from, watching clinics or participating in clinics, that coaches always have the exercises that are their go-to on the flat day, the jump day, and the cross country day. Are there exercises that you find really helpful for either setting that foundation or to help you assess where people are at the best?
Yeah, no,
over to you.
Sure. So the rhythm, I mean, that's spot on. So I always say two things in the jumping: rhythm and line. With rhythm and line, anything can be built. If your rhythm, and here's the part that's great with rhythm, is a rider might have trouble knowing if they were deep to the fence. They might have trouble knowing if their line was just right, because those skills develop over time. but almost anybody can feel if the rhythm got too fast or not too fast or too slow, but they can feel if it changed. So it's a good one to go to, because even if you're the most like the worst dancer in the world, if you're dancing badly, if the rhythm's not following. With a horse on board, you can really tell that if that's going on or not. So it's a simple one to give people as a task. Plus, if there's an inability to hold the rhythm, then there's a higher risk of bad things happening. So if you can't control the rhythm, then you're not really controlling the horse in the first place. So I think that would be absolutely priority number one. Obviously, if they're not pointing at the jump, they can't jump the jump. But I do think, for me, rhythm is actually above line, because I'd rather have someone not pointing at the jump than flying at the jump. And then, obviously, you got to be able to put them where you want to go. So those two things are really important to me. And then I'm a big I pressure for people riding distances and stuff, and understanding why they're riding distances. And actually, recently, whenever I go to do clinics, I tell people they need to watch the video that we did for Ride IQ on how the horse gets to the spot. I'm a believer the rider should participate in that, not I absolve myself of it. If I have a balance, then the horse should find the distance. That doesn't make any sense to me, because it's just a skill. Why should I be afraid of that one? So I, right out of the box at clinics, am kind of have pretty strong expectations. And it's actually, I find it often very frustrating as I first start, because I want to accomplish a lot. Usually I have an hour and a half to do it. And if the rhythm isn't there and the line isn't there, we spend a lot of time kind of fiddling on that. But as much pressure as I feel at the beginning of the lesson and stress, it almost inevitably in the last 25 minutes of the lesson, I start to see what I want to see. And the next day it is so much better. This is not a once in a while thing. I usually the next day I'm so much more relaxed, because I don't watch it and see the chaos forming. So as far as exercises for it, I also you can come into a clinic. It happens all the time. I ask about the horse and the rider, and then they'll start telling me what they need to work on. And you might as well not. I just sit there and I glaze over, and I often will be like, okay, well, that's great, but I'm going to do what I see, nothing else. Or they'll tell me what their coach, well, my coach has been, working on this, but your coach might be seeing something different than I'm seeing. And that doesn't mean that I'm right and they're wrong. It's just that we all are looking for certain things. So I want to go with, I've done this long enough that I have, opinions, but also that hopefully I have the visual to actually find, what I want out of it for the solutions I'm looking for. And there's a hint for anybody that's doing clinics. When you go into a clinic, if someone says to one person in the lesson, you got to watch this is something you need to do, then it's obviously a priority for that clinician. Make sure that you're working on it at the same time, because what I'm pushing for is going to be something that is interesting for me or important to me, that might help you with the next clinician who might have a different thing that they focus on. And so I think it's really important to kind of realize that we're trying to create a well-rounded situation. And then as far as people do have their go-to exercises, and I got to say, I don't usually, because I'll do one-off clinics, and then there's places that I go and do 2 clinics a year or 5 clinics a year and that sort of thing. And I will always send them a course of what I want them to do, set up for the ring. I don't do grids at clinics very often. I always say, if I start doing grids at clinics, that I don't care anymore, because it doesn't take much, not because grids aren't valuable, but honestly, me going to teach you a clinic over grids is a little bit like me going to teach you position lessons at a clinic. That stuff you can do at home without needing to have an eye for it. So I usually set courses up for them, and I typically write a new course map up for most of the places I go. I will sometimes, use one at a different site that I just did and I have a book that I've just written the stuff down in, and I draw it out, and then I send it on to wherever I'm going. So typically there'll be some canter rail exercise in there because nothing shows, a loss of stride and rhythm as well as having canter rails, because people will fall apart in them if they get in right. If they don't get in right, well, then we have to work on the addressing of that. But also, as they're going into those into those trot or canter rails, you get the people riding before they're having to jump, if that makes sense. They're not just cantering into the rails, they are cantering into the rails with an appropriate canter, and they're sustaining that. So midway through, they have to keep addressing that canter. And then what I do is I add that exercise in the middle of after we start jumping, I'll put it in the middle of our jump course, and I'll put it at the end of our jump course. And so the reason I do that is because what I'm trying to do is make the horses realize that when they're on a course, they never know when they're going to have to put their feet underneath them and move their feet and get involved in developing a better canter, rather than the usual progression of I do this grid, then I do that jump session, and I do my course. In the middle of a course, if a horse is thinking it's got to keep moving his feet, well, now I have a much easier way of being able to ride them. So that's probably one of my big things, is just being able to throw that footwork exercise in the middle, rather than just doing the conventional, that's how we warmed up. And then if I'm at home, it's like we use the mounds a lot to make the canter come through and get rounder in the back and stuff. I think that's actually more beneficial than doing grids. But a lot of times when I'm at clinics, I don't have access to the type of mound that I find valuable. But yeah. So and look, in the end, and anybody who's clinic with me is going to there's things I'm going to say, and I say it because I really think it matters. But one of them is when you watch the horses go at Kentucky, they all go about the same way. You don't see outliers at Kentucky very often. They gallop around in a rhythm. Riders respond quickly. They have good balances. And you have horses of every different breed, every different height, every different conformation, all achieving the same ride, because the stuff that matters, it has to be correct before you get to that level. And that's one of the things with the handicapping of Kentucky and Maryland that really is done, is I will look at people, I'll watch videos if I don't know them, and you'll look at it and you'll be like, oh my God, that shouldn't be going there, or records or anything like that, because you can see the ones that you expect to be successful, but it's a tough enough sport to do than to show up with something like that without those basics in that foundation in there. And the reality is that foundation starts with rhythm and line. There's a reason that the jumper riders are often forced to do or not forced, but they do hunters for a very long time, or equitation, because they're trying to make those people competent at the things that are going to make them successful as they go up the levels. And it's a little bit like the training scale for dressage. There is I think a training scale that could be kind of penned out for jumping, where you could say this is actually really important, but the reality is it almost seems like there's multiple people feel different things are more important, but in the end, I look at what the horses that are successful do, and they do tend to look the same. So obviously we should probably try to mirror or mimic that,
Absolutely. So Kyle, regarding rhythm, do you like students to count out loud? And if you do you like them to say 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, et cetera, et cetera? Or this person had a clinician suggest that she say 1, 2, 3, 4, with the idea that your brain will subconsciously change to try to leave on 3 if it's 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that I hate counting. I can't count when I coach. I can't count when I ride. It's just I struggle with it because I grew up, my first part of riding was done, jumping in fields in, cow pastures. So it was all off of, just natural whatever, making mistakes. And whatnot. And I'm not very numerically, I struggle. So when I'm coaching, same thing. I can watch someone, I can be like, ooh, that looks like it's going to be a bit whatever the number I wanted or don't want. But honestly, if I start counting it, I don't find myself as effective as a coach because I can't do the things that I actually am good at. And it's just because my brain doesn't work that way. And so I rode with Ian Miller for a little while, and a couple times actually over a long period of time. But he's big on counting, and he was like, not counting, say out loud to the jump, but counting the number that you're going to ride between a line or whatever. And I was like, oh, I suck at that. He's like, well, you've just got to get better at it. You've got to do that. But I also now know, and at the time I was like, okay, well, I got to work on this. But I know now a bunch of top riders that also struggle with it. So it kind of has to work for you. If the counting something works for you, great. But don't think it's the be all and end all if it isn't what works for you. So when I'm teaching clinics, or if I have students that I work with, I have some students who are counters. So I'm very diligent about walking a line and giving them the number. And then I have students who don't count, like myself, and I talk about how short, what the canter's stride length should be, because there's still math involved in it. So I'm not a huge fan of the counting. I think there's a couple things with it. One, if you're counting upwards, you can speed it up. You'll hear people who'll be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that the rhythm's important. So don't count upwards. The best suggestion I heard for counting was to count downwards, because people very rarely go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, but they'll count upwards faster. So if you're counting, it is more effective to count backwards, I believe, or down. That said, I because it's not my thing, I'm probably just not the best person to give the best answer on it. But what I find with the counting, a lot of times that people use it to almost stop people from riding. I think it's almost like, here, this will distract you from actually, getting involved and messing around with the horse, which is, maybe that's fine. But I like them to participate. I'm a big believer in riders participating and finding ownership. And then I have to say, and this is like it's just me, but when people start counting to the jump, it cringes me a little bit. It doesn't, and I know top riders. Celino Hanlon is a counter on cross country. She'll be galloping down to a jump when we were at the Olympics, and she'd be like 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm like, seriously, you're gonna count out loud? But that's her mantra that gets it going. So everybody, don't feel like you're an idiot if you do it, and don't feel like you're superior because you do it. It's what works for you, if you carry a lucky rabbit's foot and that helps you get through it, then do that. So I think it's really important to deal with, especially like someone like me who isn't very good at, who can't count effectively and ride effectively. Then if you force me on the counting, you're probably taking away some of the natural tendencies I have as a rider. So you're actually limiting me, not improving me. So if your mind is not like Ian Miller's incredibly smart, and his mind works that way, I'm not that person. So I think it's silly to kind of say, well, we all must follow that mold because they do it, because I think you actually end up stifling someone's ability. And it's a little bit, I'd say, like, in art, you can't say, well, no, this must be done this way. You have to allow for the individuality. And, I think that's the biggest thing, is allow that individuality in the rider and the horse. Some horses you train differently than other horses, and same with riders. So, it's kind of a funny question, because I do think it's a really important thing if it's important to you, but I do not believe it's important to you that, rhythm is important for everything. Counting is important for one mental state, and not important for another. So yeah, that's my feeling on it.
It's interesting. I mean, counting has come up in a number of conversations, and it seems very personal. It's how your brain works.
Yeah.
But it's nice for people to have permission to do what works for them. Sorry, my brain only goes in one way, and I'm also looking at chat right now. I'm curious, clinicking is an interesting thing because people get 2, maybe 3 days with a coach, and it's kind of like, it's parachuting into the student's life, and both the coach and the student want a positive outcome that hopefully is somehow sustainable. So my question is, what should people be hoping to get out of a clinic if they're wanting to, make it really impactful for them and their horse? And are people clinicking for the right reasons or the wrong reasons? What are your thoughts on that?
So obviously, like, it's a big part of my job now. It kind of goes up and down on when we're allowing, me to travel and do clinics and things like that. I've been doing them forever. There was a time where I was going, like, I'm probably doing as much as I've ever done clinic-wise at the moment, just because we kind of changed our finances a little bit. We've moved a lot of horses out. We've got less horses for as an income stream, just because it's hard to find staffing in our area. So we are trying to make our numbers manageable. And clinics are great from the coaching end, because it's like you go in and you're gone, but you go in and there's no, it's not like having a horse in the barn where you got to pay for hay for it, right? So it's just a straight up, whatever you're getting, you're taking home. I think they're great. I think they're super for supplementing. I think they're really good if you can go, like when I go and repeat that, like I go to Washington and I do clinics out there at Sarah Sullivan's place. And it's awesome because I get to see the people progress, and I get to like do more guiding, and it's more program coaching, and I think programs produce riders. I think in other areas where I go in and do like one clinic, I think it can be very helpful because it's that outside set of eyes coming in, and you're trying to, really focus on, from a different outlook. But my job in a clinic is I come in, I do everything that I think needs to happen. I try to change to what I want to see. I think that then it's the rider's job to go home and work the ideas that you put forward into their program. And I think there's, I do my clinics now, I'm really enjoying because of where I get to go and the places I go. It's almost set up a little bit better for me. But I know for a while there, I'd go into clinic and I'd be like, there's these people that are like professional clinic takers, and that's fine if that's what you enjoy. But it's really hard to get truly better if I come in and go, this is what I want to see. Doug comes in and says, this is what I want to see. Now, sure, we're looking for similar things. Buck comes in and says, this is what I'm doing. This is how I want to see it. I guarantee you we're all training for the same idea, but we're all training differently. Your horse only speaks one language, and that's the one that you speak to it. So if I come in and speak Spanish to you, and then someone else comes in and speaks Chinese to you, and blah, 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 you're not going to get a very clear understanding of what's going on. And that's how your horse, I think, feels sometimes. So what you do is it has to be clear to the horse. And then there's replication. I might do some stuff that I get where I see the horse like start to really change. And that makes me super excited. Like, I love that. It's worth more than money, I promise you. But when I'm getting that result, people often be like, they'll go that exercise and they'll walk off the number of strides from the rail to their jump or whatever. And I'll be like, okay, that's fine. But look, I've adjusted this according to what I'm seeing, not according to some arbitrary, this is the number that it has to be. If I see a horse, I want to change the horse. So I'm putting it together a little bit, a lot off of just sort of feel, and that takes a long time to develop. It's different than riding completely. You're developing your eye, the desire to change things. But the people that just use their clinics for training, what I typically see is they tend to not progress. tend to improve but not progress, if that makes sense. Like, so they ride well, but without that consistent little bit of a, oh, this is how we're working towards that goal. It gets a bit lost, because again, it could be a fantastic clinic. You go in, Buck said it to me years ago. He's like, clinics are great. You go in, you feel like, you look like a hero, you leave and everything's gone by Thursday because they go back to whatever they were doing, which is where your regular lessons, ride IQ and things like that are essential. So that you just sort of stay on the same program. And I don't mean same program in, again, my program or someone else's program, but you stay on the same, like, we're all looking for the same thing. So you have to be working on a day-to-day basis. And so it's a little bit when I go into clinics, people go into clinics and do a grid the first day. Well, it doesn't take, teaching and working over a grid it's useful, it's helpful, but I should give you that for homework, not for the lesson, I don't feel like, because I think it makes it a little bit, it's almost like cheating because everybody's doing the same thing. Nobody can ever get out of whack because we're forcing them to just go down the same exercise all the time. And as I always say, it's a bit like riding with training wheels and never taking them off. I like to make the rider give them more ownership. And I think grids are something you should be doing as well, but you should be doing it not in front of me at a clinic, but at home, or if you're riding with me regularly, that sort of thing. And I would say the same thing about position. When I go into a clinic, I'll be like, all right, I'm not going to change your position at all today. Because the reality is position takes time to develop. And so if I want to change something in your position, you have a habit there in your body. You're not doing it because you're trying to be wrong. You're doing it because that's where you feel you should be. If I want to change it, that's a 3-month deal at home. So I will say to them, this is what I think you need to do. Put your leg here, blah, blah, blah. But you got to work on that at home. Because if I just sit here and we work on that now, I'm not going to change it. All I'm doing is identifying and maybe getting you to put it there for a little bit, but guaranteed tomorrow is going right back to that without you putting that effort in. So I tend to stay away from those two things. It would be easier to just focus on that because everybody could benefit from it, but I can't make the big change with that. And so that's sort of my take on that. I'm a big fan of clinics as well for, like, because I can't stop myself. I want people to know why. I don't want to go in there and just be like, you do this and have them without the backup information on it. So you hope that they come away, owning the understanding or whatever. And then what kind of person are you? Like some people benefit really well. Like I've done a couple clinics the last few years where I've gone in once and I go back and this person comes in. I'm like, oh my God, I remember I do remember horses really well, but I'll be like, you totally fixed that. And like, it could be the next year. That wasn't done in my clinic. That was done, we might've made the first, thing open, but they did that at home. And it's like, that's the real trick of it is the clinic is there to give you the information, but it's like reading a book, but not studying the information and really owning it. You don't want to be regurgitating because you read the book. You want to have it so that it's in your heart. You can take that information and put it to the communication you're giving the horse.
Yeah, so I think this information is so helpful. And Debbie is in chat and she's asking, is it valuable to have the rider's normal coach watch a clinic?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because again, you're trying to just expose. Look, so here's the thing is let's say someone comes in for a clinic and they come without their coach and I say, oh my God, you've got to do like these things or, I need you to, but they'll take that and go away from it and go to their coach. Oh, well, Kyle said, but Kyle's looking at one moment in time, maybe that day I'm seeing something different. Maybe, or the horse goes really well and they'll be like, oh, he's just having a good day. And it's like, well, maybe he's having a good day because you're being guided around and maybe that'll help the coach do better. And, if you're a coach, you want to see what someone's doing with your horse and student. So I do think it's important. I do find that there are always, I think coaches are threatened a lot of time by that stuff. They'll come in and they'll feel like you're picking on their rider for, and that means that they're not doing a good job. Like I helped someone today who is not my regular student, but they asked me for a lesson and I'm here and had time and I've helped them a couple times. So I was coaching them and I'm like, they ride with a student of mine. And I'm like, you're sitting off to the left. I'm like, again, I can't fix that today, but I'm telling you, you're sitting off to the left. And as your coach, pointed this out to you, and I had someone video the horse moving underneath them so they could show that it actually was pushing his hips out to the left one way and he was dead straight the other way. And, it's like pretty obvious. I had them video from the back end. It used to be you had to trust the coach. Now as a coach, they don't need to trust you because you back it up with a video camera. But I'm not sure that's the best thing for it as well, because it just kind of degrades a little bit that what you're talking about. I'm going to listen to you. Anyway, so I sort of said, because it's a student of mine that was coaching them, I'm like, did they mention anything? And they're like, no. I'm like, well, I'll talk to them about it then, because this is something that has to change, and that's your day-to-day work that's going to change it. But if that coach was there, is she going to feel, and I know she wouldn't, because I'm just sort of say what I see and that's it. I'm not trying to be like, you suck. I'm just trying to make the kid better. And then what's going to be like in 5 years. But sometimes coaches, I think, feel like you say that and they'll be like, oh yeah, I tell them that all the time. Well, okay, these are different words the way I'm saying it. Hopefully maybe it's not effective, or maybe it's more effective. It doesn't matter. But it's not really like, it's not anybody's fault, because it's not like, unless you're letting it happen, then, I think coaches sometimes get a little bit like they're on display. The only way I judge a coach to be effective or ineffective is if I see 10 of their students doing the same things. That's how you know whether the person's good or not. And, so I think the coach has to come in with a bit of an open mind. And I think it's sometimes better for them to come in so that they can kind of take that knowledge, assimilate it, and then hopefully, this is what I really hope, is I hope when they come in, they start to see what I'm seeing. Whether they decide that that's a huge priority or not, it doesn't matter. But that's really what you want, is because you're what are we trying to do? We're trying to make horses' lives better, trying to make riders better, trying to make everybody safer, and then, trying to have some fun with it as well, because it is supposed to be fun, they say. I don't know. Nobody told me that when I was trying to learn to become a rider. But I think that it depends again on the person, because I do think sometimes coaches come in and they come up and they'll start like, I was coaching someone recently and their coach came up and was like, yeah, that's exactly what I tell her all the time. And then the next time I was teaching the person, the coach was there and they were like, I showed up and she was like, well, I had them, and like, I'm no judgment, but you do what you're going to do. And if I was there to watch it and I could say, oh, I might try this. Now we're both working on the level to improve your rider. But I think sometimes they feel a little like I have to, show you what I'm doing. And I can understand that. Like, I mean, don't think for a second. We all have egos, right? It's not like I'm sitting here going, oh, I'm perfect about, not feeling a little bit like trod on. You bring a horse to a clinic yourself and it starts stopping and you feel and you're like, oh my God, this sucks. But again, all we're trying to do is get to somewhere, wherever that journey's taking us. So if we're having a great day, super, let's make it even better. And if we're having a bad day, it's okay. Nobody needs to feel like, threatened by it, unless there's no attempt to improve.
Yeah. And one thing, as you're talking, like, I realize in hindsight, when it came to clinics, because it's these big names who most of the time I never had the opportunity to meet in any other circumstances, I found myself being really like performative. Like, I just wanted Kyle to think I'm a great rider, and my brain wasn't enough saying like, that I'm here to ride how I ride and take things home that will help me going forward too. But I think it's really, I mean, it's natural kind of to just be in the performative, I want everything to go perfect, where really it doesn't have to go perfect for you to get out of it what you're looking to get out of it. We have an interesting question in chat, and I'm so glad that she asked it. This is from Steph. She said, I tend to sign up for a level above what I'm training at a clinic. I like it because I can push myself and my horse in a controlled environment. What do you think about that? Is it a good idea or a bad idea?
I hate it. I hate it. I mean, look, it wouldn't matter if you did that in a clinic with me, because when I do the clinics, I can make a 2-foot course very difficult, and usually I start there because I want action, not height, you know. But here's the thing: is, let's say, and look, if you go in and perform, I think it's fine. But a lot of times, and I have people that arrange clinics like that's almost their profession, and they'll be like, oh, they tried to enter the training, I put them in the novice or whatever. Because here's the thing you have to understand: is the other people in there, that if everybody's clicking along, for me anyways, if I'm doing the clinic, promise, if you're getting it right, it's going to get harder. I'm not going to go, okay, that's a novice exercise, now we're done. I did the one last weekend in Colorado, and I had one group that was 2 groups that were novice, and one of them, they just nailed all the stuff I wanted. So guess what happened? And I said to them at the end, I'm like, well, you guys are doing that well, so here we go. Let's make it harder. So for me, it doesn't need to be a bigger ask. And partly though, when I do clinics, a lot of people do clinics, they'll go out to do cross country, let's say, and they use all the jumps that are set up, and they just jump whatever's set. And I usually have show jumps taken out there so I can set exercise that I think are going to challenge them. And if they find it right, then I go and make it just a little bit harder. So, that one I think is a little bit maybe personal to the clinicians, but I will say, and this happens all the time, you show up and you're like, okay, we got 4 that are like banging the level, and then you got one that's like struggling. Well, that adds half an hour to the lesson, because I want to work through it. I know Jimmy used to just be like, okay, you're holding everybody back, you're out of the lesson, and I can't do that. But as long as you're competent enough to get it done, I don't care if you're riding prelim or if you're riding training but you're comfortable jumping the prelim stuff, then go in the prelim group. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me what level you actually compete at, but you want to make sure your competency matches up with the people that are in the lesson. Because if you have one outlier, or even if you have, say, 2 novice groups, and one novice group has similar horses that are all sort of at the same level, you got the other novice group and they got 4 that are great and one that is either way above or way below, then it doesn't work terribly well. It means that basically you're saying, I'll have to change my lesson to not actually challenge the other people, or I have to say that you're going to be standing beside while the other people do something more. So the one thing with mine is I don't think you have to worry about being in a level, because it doesn't really correlate. I can hardly remember what level people are doing. Often I just watch the stuff and I'm like, this is what I see, this is what I want to see, and I want to have fun with it. So I want to go and ask a ton of stuff, and that has nothing to do with if you're a prelim rider, intermediate rider, whatever. And when I used to do a lot of young rider stuff, it was always the same when I go and do clinics. When I went to certain areas, the training group would be incredible. The prelim group would be pretty good, and the intermediate couple of people would be terrible, because they got to go intermediate without actually working the basics, whereas those training people would be sitting there drilling away on the basics. So they were really competent. And the intermediate people, even though they were jumping the fences, they weren't doing it in the way that I wanted to see it. And so then what happens is you're like, I can't endorse this. We got to go back to what really matters. And it's frustrating for those guys, because they think, well, I'm an intermediate level rider, but it's really the basics. And you'll hear that in all the lessons and people talking about this stuff. It's like Grand Prix dressage rider is doing the basics. So don't worry about again, it depends, I guess, on the clinician, but I wouldn't worry about what level you're in. If the clinician's good, they're going to find a way to challenge you. And if you come away from a clinic because it's going to happen. You're going to come away from one of my clinics and be like, oh, I didn't feel like I got enough out of that. Or, oh my God, I felt like that was really a lot. It's not always the same thing. It's a little bit like eating dinner. Sometimes you liked the orange chicken, and sometimes the orange chicken sucks. So, don't be afraid of the experience, I guess,
I
Yeah,
always
think
like the orange chicken.
value add there, Jessica. So what Catherine asked a great question, which I think is a good one for us to kind of wrap up with. And I cannot believe we're already here at the hour, but this has been really, really helpful. She's asking kind of how do people find out about clinics, I guess, in general, but I guess for your clinics, like where do people find out about that? Because she feels like by the time she sees it on like Facebook, it's full or it's a day before without enough time to organize.
Really, really good question. It's a little bit like, I don't know, honestly, because Jen maybe could answer this, because what happens in our situation is it gets set up and it goes, like, I just found out someone came up to me today, Rhonda Sexton, who organized a clinic for me this spring in Texas, just because I didn't know Rhonda, but she somehow felt compelled to try to help me out and gave me a clinic there. Well, it turns out I'm going there in December on the 2nd and 3rd is what she told me today. But I think I won't know until I'm like a week away. We didn't, like Colorado, I think everything came through, and on Monday I'm like, oh God, I'm going to a clinic. So I'm like really not good at putting the information out there. So I'm assuming the organizers are where to go. Where they put that stuff is difficult for me to tell you, because as we found earlier on this, Kyle's pretty incompetent with pretty much anything technological. And I'm so busy just trying to get by that I don't do a very good job putting the stuff out there. So typically my clinics, I think people kind of hear about because they've been there before, and they get in, like when we used to do our camps, which would get like 50 people, 60 people in them. We had great people working for us that would email the people that'd been previously. So Jan, why don't you tell them that, because good Lord, I don't.
Yeah, I would say depending on what area you are, just contact. Well, you can message me and I can tell you if you tell me what area you're in, but we can put you in touch with whoever organizes it, because what they typically do is just have a list and email it out. That's probably the best way, because we don't put anything out there early. A lot of organizers do, but like you're just saying that possibly they're all full by then. But that I would get on the email list.
There's also Strider, the website Strider. I don't know what percentage of clinics end up there, but I know they have a lot of events even beyond clinics that are listed there. So that might be a good place to look, even if it's not clinics that are fit for you because of the coach or the geography or whatever it is. You might start seeing the same clinic organizers' names showing up in your area. So, and the people who started Strider and now run Strider are absolute gems. So, and clearly it's something that's necessary based on what we're all chatting about.
Well, I think the areas also used to put, the areas used to be like they would have it on their board or page or whatever, but I don't know if that still happens. Like I wish I could answer that a little more effectively. We should actually have like a good professional organizer come on and maybe discuss like how to put clinics on and stuff, because that's the same thing happens where people are like, oh, when do you come to our area? Well, for someone who does clinics, how, like when they say, do you ever come to Texas or Colorado? Yeah, I don't, or I didn't, but all it takes is someone to put it on. And usually if you put it on and you have a decent trainer coming in, people know the name and you'll fill the clinic, and then you get what you want out of it. So it's not, I'm not saying it's easy, because it's not, but I think people think of it as like this, like, oh, I can't do that. I don't think it's that difficult to say, okay, these are the groups,
Absolutely. That's might inspire someone who's listening to just make it happen. It's a life lesson that we're ending on. If you want something, make it happen. You can do it. All right, you guys, we are over our time just a bit. This clinics really ended up being the topic, which isn't something that we've talked about, and I feel like we could keep talking about it, especially given Kyle's ability to elaborate. And
just did the clinic, so I have lots of like built in there.
totally. Oh no, people in chat are finding out about clinics that just passed in their area that they would have liked to do. That's the curse of looking that stuff up. There will be good clinics coming up for you too, I'm sure. Okay, with that, Kyle, I hope the AECs go amazing. Jen, hunker down. I hope the storm is not too bad for you guys. And thank you both so much for doing this with us.
Thank you, guys.